Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're listening, however you're listening. This is Quantum of History. Today's going to be episode 21. We're going to be doing License to Kill, and we're going to be talking about the Sinaloa Cartel. If you didn't know anything about me, I used to be a Border Patrol agent down in Deming, New Mexico. That's where I was stationed at. I spent most of my time in the boot heel of New Mexico. I would go towards Antelope Wells, point of entry, to Columbus, New Mexico, Achita, and then to spend some time in the Chiricahua Mountains in Arizona. Basically, the entire time I was down there, the cartel that we dealt with almost exclusively that ran that area was Sinaloa Cartel. You know Sinaloa from El Chapo, Guzman. He's probably the most famous one that you have. But Sinaloa is one of the four big ones that ran the 70s, 80s, 90s. And there are more today, but Sinaloa is probably the one that everyone's heard about. And the one that I have firsthand experience, battling. So it'll be a fun episode. We're gonna have some good guests on today, and we're gonna talk about License to Kill, which is one of those movies that just divides the community a lot. I try to watch it, and the thing I always say is that the movie itself isn't a bad movie for an action movie. It's just not a Bond film. It feels nothing like a Bond film. Nothing about Dalton feels Bond to me. Nothing about that movie feels like a Bond movie. It just really feels just like a drug thing. And like I said, it's whenever drugs are the enemy's main goal, they kind of lose me because maybe just because I've been doing it for so long. I've been on the war on drugs or whatever. In real life, it just doesn't move the needle for me at all. I have a lot of problems with the plot. I find License to Kill to be, ugh. But we'll get into that with my friend Greg. I just think it's always more fun to talk a movie with something than just have me listen to my conjecture. So without further ado, we're going to get into the main topic, the meat of it. We're going to start right into Sinaloa, the history of the Sinaloa Cartel, and then we're going to go back into the movies and stuff like that. We're going to kind of switch the order around for today. So again, welcome in episode 21, License to Kill, the Sinaloa Cartel. So in 2006, there were four main Mexican drug trafficking organizations: the Tijuana Ariela Felix organization, the Sinaloa Cartel, the Juarez Vicente Carrillo Fuentes organization, or the CFO, and also Gulf Cartel. So you look at the map of what it was ran. The Tijuana ran the Tijuana corridor up to Baja California that way. Sinaloa owned Arizona and New Mexico and some of Texas, but not very much. Pretty much stopped at Juarez. That's where you got the Vicente CFO. And then they were the Mexican Mafia and stuff like that. The Juarez cartel, they kind of got mixed into. But when it started out, that's what it was. And it ran up Juarez, ran up to El Paso, and they owned most of Texas, that little corridor there. And then the Gulf ran southern Texas, like Corpus Christi, and then up towards Louisiana and things like that. Those were the four areas that were run by these cartels. Now, influx, power grabs, deaths, and arrests with leadership within these organizations have led to faction splitting and more conflict. As of 2019, the DEA has identified 9 organizations as Sinaloa Los Zetas, which were the former Gulf cartel enforcers. Some of their cartels trained through special forces, through the U.S. Special Forces as a security. And then when they actually tried to be more violent and more raise up and be more violent as Gulf Cartel didn't want to, and the Zetas ended up breaking off and becoming their own faction, and we'll talk about them a little more later. The Tijuana AFO is still around, Juarez CFO, the Beltran La Valle, Gulf de la Familia Michoacana, the Knights and Templar, and the Cartel Jalisco Nuevo Generacion. And those are the 9 ones that the DEA has as of 2009, but there's more factions inside those factions, but those are the main ones that they have identified that have come to power. In mid-2019, the leader of the long-dominant Sinaloa cartel, Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, was sentenced to life in a U.S. prison, further fracturing the once solidified cartel. In December 2019, Genaro Garcia Luna, the former head of public security in the Felipe Calderon administration, which he was the president from 2006 to 2012 in Mexico, was arrested in the United States on charges that he had taken enormous bribes from Sinaloa, further eroding public confidence in Mexican government and efforts. The government's so much weaker in Mexico than the cartel is. I'll tell you a story about when I was in Border Patrol. Nobody trusts the government in Mexico. It's too much. The cartels have far more power than the government does. And I'll tell you the story about one time I met a general out of the Juarez when I was on the border. So I was hiking, and as you did in Border Patrol, you just hiked for miles. That was what you did. That was your job, basically. You'd go to the hike mountains. You'd bring FLIRs, recons, just any kind of night vision goggles, go up to the top, and then you'd scan. And some of these recons, you can see rabbit ears for 2 miles away on these infrared stuff. They're pretty amazing technology that you have. So you just hike up there and you wait for groups to come across, either drug smugglers or large groups of people sneaking in. And one time I was hiking up, and it was during the daytime, just doing my daytime hikes, trying to pass the time. Because you hiked about 3 to 4 miles a day on the border. If you wanted to be a go-getter agent, you'd have to hike up a mountain every day. So I was going up through, and then all of a sudden, I see the Mexican military coming through. It was one Humvee with a 50 cal gunner, and some other just regular Jeeps coming through. The Mexican there's a big drug load coming up when the Mexican military comes through and starts clearing out houses. Now, you don't think of houses on the side. When you're on the border, it's desolate where you are. I had to drive over 60 miles to even see a gas station when you're down there. It is nothing. You have to see this, and I'll show you. If you're watching on YouTube, I'll show you some pictures that I took myself. There's nothing there. It is just an wide open range. But you know what big drug load's coming through, because there'll be these little huts and shacks that are on the Mexican side of the border, and bandits and stuff like that will hide in there. And as they come in with the drug loads, they'll just rob the drug smugglers, and then they'll bring it across the border and then sell it or do whatever they do with it. So I was there and I was hiking, and all of a sudden they must have seen me hiking because I was kind of close to the border. So they turn and they start driving right at me. And again, there's a guy working the 50 cal gunner on the top, and then a bunch of other people with like scars or something like that. I couldn't tell exactly which gun they were using. So they come out, and the general comes out, and he's not armed, but everybody else around him is. And the guy in the gunner, the 50 cal. Now, mind you, I just have my pistol and my M4A1 carbine. Now, I love my M4A1 carbine. I love that gun. I miss having that as my duty carry. But it's not gonna do much against the 50 cal gunner. I can promise you that. So they came in and they just charged. So I'm just sitting there, and what are you gonna do? So I walked up. Introduced myself, started talking, spoke Spanish and English. We'd go back and forth between what he knew of English and what I knew of Spanish. We had a conversation, and the whole time, all his little cronies around kept egging me on, kept trying to fake pull the trigger and stuff like that on me. And it's like, at that point, you guys have the 50 cal gunner, you have 6 of you guys all armed. I promise you I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to bait onto this. So it was just like this weird, it was the literal definition of a Mexican standoff. Yeah, we had ourselves a little Mexican standoff. But the general was polite the entire time we were talking. He was so very, very proper, very polite. We talked about random things about what's going on. And he was like, just routine patrol and all that. And then, of course, I know it's all BS, but that was the first time I ever had a 50 cal pointed at me, and luckily it was the only time I've had a 50 cal pointed at me. So I was it was an interesting to see the dichotomy of how the general handled himself, because he was, like I said, he was proper, he was everything, and everybody around him. It was definitely a dick measuring contest a little bit. But it was, but that's what they do. So the Mexican military will come through, and they'll make sure there's no huts, there's no bandits in the huts, and that way they safe passage, because they're not really worried about Border Patrol very much. We're easy to beat, especially the places where I was in the boot heel in New Mexico. It's just there's nothing there. The only reason you can tell the difference between a border fence and a regular cattle fence is that cattle fences only have 3 barbs, and the U.S.-Mexican border has 4 strings of barbed wire. And I get asked all the time, would the wall be, should we build the wall? No, the wall is a big, giant waste of money. We'll just climb over it. A giant waste of money. Okay, it is a giant waste of money to build a giant wall through the entire Mexican border. It is such a waste of, I can't even explain how much a big waste of money that is, because there's not enough people to man it. And they'll just cut it, or they'll just drive over it, or they'll just hike over it. Huge waste of money. What you need there, or if you're going to do border security, you just use drones or something like that. But the wall itself, the build the wall thing, total waste of money. How did it get so bad? How did the public lose trust in the Mexican government and the Mexican cartels? Well, the story kind of begins. It's one of violence, evolution, corruption, and massive wealth. Starting in the 1960s, the Sinaloa Cartel started out of Sinaloa State in Mexico. The land in Sinaloa is very fertile and it's ripe for growing and cultivating marijuana. Originally, drug trafficking was a rudimentary operation for these budding organizations. The U.S. border was wide open, and for the most part, it was relatively easy for these farmers to get marijuana across the border into the U.S. From these humble beginnings, ambition and brutality led a simple growing operation to manifest itself into a network of smuggling contraband in a multitude of countries into the United States. The first leader of the modern-day Sinaloa Cartel was Pedro Aviles. Pedro began shifting the simple farming industry network approach of marijuana of years approach, because again, it just started up just growing weed and bringing it across. But in the 1960s, the U.S. grew an appetite for more illicit drugs other than marijuana, including cocaine, heroin. But mainly it started branching into cocaine, and then it started getting to other things. And what it is today is, methamphetamine, fentanyl, heroin, cocaine, crack, all that stuff. It's mainly, but you're seeing the growth of methamphetamine and fentanyl in Mexico for sure. So as Pedro's vision to turn drug trade into an entire complex network of poly-drug smugglings, as Aviles was building his empire, he brought along his son's friend, Joaquin Guzman Loera, or more commonly known to everybody as El Chapo. He's now become the Michael Jordan of drug cartel, right? Everybody knows El Chapo. So Aviles was killed in a shootout in 1978 with Mexican authorities, and El Chapo became the leader of Sinaloa. As Sinaloa and other cartels looked to further expand their operation, the rise of cocaine in the 1970s opened a new avenue for business development. Sinaloa, the Phoenix Cartel, Juarez Cartel, and others sought out the Medellin Cartel in Colombia for cocaine to smuggle into the United States. At the time, cocaine really isn't grown very well in Mexico. You have to go to Colombia for it. Mata Balestros, a Honduran national that lived in Cuba much of the time, was used as a liaison between these cartels and Medellin. So they went, when a cartel wanted to get into the cocaine business, they basically sought out Balesteros, and then he would set it up with Medellin. He was the middleman between all these places. As these alliances formed, multiple cartels began doing business with Colombia, and all amassing wealth greater than some countries' GDPs. It was going smoothly until the Guadalajara cartel killed an undercover DEA agent named Enrique Carmenina. But what happened was the DEA and the U.S. government put massive amounts of pressure to remedy the murder. The Guadalajara cartel was forced into hiding and became fractioned. The Arellano Felix brothers set up camp in Tijuana. The Carrillo Fuentes family moved to Juarez. El Chapo and his partner Hector Luis Palma Salazar remained in the Sinaloa area, which when I say Sinaloa again, it's basically Arizona to Juarez. And what Sinaloa cartel runs into is basically Chicago. So since they have the straight up run, they'll go from Arizona was the main corridor. Now it's become Texas with evolving drug trades. But you go from Arizona to straight up shot to Chicago, and then from Chicago it goes throughout the country. You can go wherever you want then. So that's where they got El Chapo, was that he was supplying Chicago with basically all their drugs came from the Sinaloa cartel. From there, El Chapo created and manifested one of the most brutal reigns of any organization in the world. He orchestrated mass murders. In 1992, he sent 40 gunmen to a Tijuana cartel party, killing 90 of their members. Sinaloa rose to the top of the cartel world, surpassing even South American DTOs, drug trafficking organizations, that we call them DTOs, but to become one of the most affluent cartels in the world. Along with El Chapo, Ismael Zambada Garcia, El Name, El Mayo ran Sinaloa. When El Chapo began to think of himself as a rock star, he even did interviews with Sean Penn. While El Chapo began to think of himself as a rock star, he did interviews with Sean Penn. He kind of thought he was a rock star. He was invincible. And El Mayo chose to be much more low-key, instead maintaining his reclusive nature, deep within the protection of his Sinaloa members in the hills of the state of, in the hills of Sinaloa. El Chapo had been arrested and escaped from Mexican jails on multiple occasions. One famous escape, he even had a mile-long tunnel dug underneath where he was being held in the Mexican jail, and then he got out by that way. And then he did it multiple times until finally he was brought to U.S. soil. So when El Chapo's reign was over, and in 2017 he was extradited to the United States, where he will spend the rest of his life in a U.S. prison. The realization that El Chapo wasn't getting out this time led to an influx of violence over control of Sinaloa. El Mayo and El Chapo's sons were the target of attacks from Damaso Lopez Nunez, known as Licenciado, and his son Minilik, as the struggle for control of Sinaloa raged on. And as of today, El Mayo is the last remaining leader of the original set of cartel bosses, a relic of the old guard. El Chapo's sons, known as the Chapitos, are now leading Sinaloa into the modern-day trafficking. So he's really El Mayo is the last of a dying breed. And now you're looking at all these factions within Zetas and everything like that. There's not as much struggle. That's why you're seeing a rise of violence coming out. Is because even though these criminal organizations do crime and commit murders, they're supposed to do, for the most part, they're supposed to be like meaningful ones. These have just become chaos, and whoever reigns the most evil or can do the most messed up stuff, like cutting off heads and decorating them, and all these people being hung off of bridges in Mexico, they're the ones that's become, they've lost the fact that there was always a reason for it. And if you did a message killing, it was before a message, and now it's just become just who can be the most brutal one. And we talked a lot about the Zetas, and if you were in Southeast Texas, you know about them more, or that kind of area. And the Zetas have kind of taken over that area. And the U.S. government is worried about them. And what we talk about a lot of times in this podcast and from other times is when the CIA, the U.S. government, arms other people to fight the enemy. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. You see it in Afghanistan. You see it in Venezuela. You saw it in Cuba. And you see it in actually the Mexican cartels. And I'll give you an example of this. So this is just intel that I got when we were in, we got a guy in Border Patrol when I was down there. I'm going to debrief him. There was an operation called Fast and Furious that the U.S. government did, and one of our Border Patrol agents were killed by one of the guns. The ATF was letting guns go from the United States into Mexico. They just let them go. Their idea was that they were going to track them once they got into the U.S. and then see where they went. Well, one of those guns that the ATF let the cartels have ended up killing one of our Border Patrol agents, Brian Terry. In the mountains of Arizona. He was on a BORTAC officer, which is like SWAT, and they were doing an operation trying to stop bandits from robbing drug mules because they were violent and they had ARs and M4s and all this other stuff. Well, one of our agents was shot and killed with a gun that ATF allowed to go into Mexico. Now, one of these guys that we caught on the border worked for Sinaloa, and he said that the reason that these guns were being put, they went under the guy. So the ATF sold this as a we're going to try to track where these guns are going and by serial numbers and all this other stuff. And even as I'm saying it, it sounds so stupid. It must sound so stupid to you guys too. How are you going to track these serial numbers that go in? You're not there. Once they're in Mexico, what are you looking at serial numbers from everything? No, of course not. The actual reason was that the U.S. government was growing more and more scared that the Zetas over in East Texas were going to grow too big. So what they were doing was they were arming the Sinaloa Cartel in order so that the Sinaloa Cartel could go and fight the Zetas. It's a move that the CIA and the U.S. government has used time and time and time again. And it ended up getting one of our agents killed in the Zetas. So this is the kind of thing that the U.S. government's worried about. It was a cartel like the Zetas who, again, they're special force trained. This is years ago. There was some people who were initially trained. But basically the foundation of what they were trained at by the U.S. Special Forces lives on in the Mexican. And these people are the ones that the U.S. government is worried about coming into power. So what do? They arm them with U.S. guns so that they can go fight the Zetas. I lived it for a couple years. And there was, we heard one story where an owner wanted to keep his shop. So initially rent was $10,000 a month. 10,000 pesos a month. And then next month, all right, it's 15. He's like, okay, we still have to pay. You have no choice because they're being told to pay it. And next week, it's 20. And then it's up all the way up to 15. Suddenly, the shopper said, no, can't do it anymore. So he doesn't pay. He gets drug out to the center of the town. and then he gets a foot cut off in the middle of the town. And the person who's doing the foot cutting is the chief of police in this Mexican town. I mean, that's a different way of life. And, I don't know. I'll never understand what that's like. Thank God I don't live in anywhere where that is a possibility. But this is the realization of these cartels, because they have more money and power. Our radio systems, so we have, our radio systems are pretty encrypted, but they're basically one-stage encryption, and there are different stages of encryptions. So it's hard to break an encrypted one with just one signal, but what the cartels have are a 3-stage encryption. Some of the best ones that have the best loads that are coming through. 3-stage encryption, which means that there are 3 different towers that it has to bounce off of. Every time it bounces off a tower, it gets a new code. That new code sends that wave to another transmitter, who gets another code. So the only way to break these codes is you have to break 3 different codes in order to intercept the radio transmissions. The cartel has that. We don't. The U.S. doesn't, and the Mexican military certainly doesn't. So there are rudimentary ways that you can get into their comms, but when they want a really expensive load to come in, that is not. They're not doing that on your walkie-talkies. That is coming on a 3-code encryption satellites. That is more than what we have on the border. So that's the battle that you're facing. That's the battle that the Mexican government is facing, because they have an interest. They don't want to go to jail. They don't want to get killed. They want to keep their loads coming through. And the U.S. government's like, we're not really a huge fan of drugs. But if they come in, what are you going to do? So it's much more important for them. And that's the battle that they're facing in this war on drugs, and the fact that it is massive amounts of wealth. Again, the cartels at the same point have more money than than some countries' GDPs. It's an insane amount of wealth that comes out of this. It's a lot of stuff to fight over. In modern day, trafficking looks much differently than it did in the 1960s and 70s, as the demand for different types of drugs has changed. In the 1960s and 70s, drug use was cocaine and marijuana, and both start from farms. Well, in 2020, fentanyl, carfentanil, methamphetamine rule the day, both of which are chemically created. This is, carfentanil and fentanyl have taken over heroin as the drug of choice. You can't even. I work drugs in Baltimore City. You don't find real heroin anymore. Not like raw, actual grown heroin that you'd get from Afghanistan. It's almost all fentanyl. I can't tell you, especially on the east side of Baltimore, it's very hard to find actual heroin. It's all this fentanyl. It's all being made in these super labs down in Mexico. Methamphetamine, same thing. So you can cut out the middlemen of Colombia, Afghanistan, all these other places where you have to outsource the actual grown things. Carfentanil, fentanyl, and methamphetamine you can just grow in super labs. And they're expensive to build at first, but you make your money 5 million-fold very quickly in this drug trade. Chicago's the same way. All fentanyl, really. You're seeing it. It's kind of changing in all the big cities, especially Sinaloa owns Chicago, for sure. And a lot of Baltimore that I have is run from New York, which comes from everything. Most loads come from New York, then down through. But Chicago is run by Sinaloa. Make no mistake about it. All these cartels have morphed from highly organized hierarchies to horizontally formed cartels, and the violence has grown exponentially. Without strong control and strong organization, rules in more of these criminal enterprises have changed. Again, like who can be the bloodiest? Who can be the cruelest? Who can be the most feared? It's not a mafioso. You come to me on the day of my daughter's wedding. I know. My impressions are so good all the time. That one is one of my favorites, my Marlon Brando. You come to me on the day of my daughter's wedding. I know. Close your eyes. You think of Marlon Brando. Like when Marlon Brando was Marlon Brando. One more time. And you come to me on the day of my daughter's wedding. Last time. I promise I won't do it again. And now I'm going to bring in my good friend. I've worked with him in drugs for a long time. He was my partner for a while. And we're going to bring him on. And he's going to talk about License to Kill. And we'll see how it goes. All right. Let's go talk about the actual movie License to Kill. Welcome in. My good friend, Gregory Edelman. Worked with you for a long time. Welcome in.
Thank you.
It's
Glad to be here.
First time we're doing this in person. It's way better to do it in person and drinking.
Absolutely.
Not
Absolutely.
Not that I haven't enjoyed the Sky Points, but there's just something about like drinking together.
Oh, no, 100%.
And talking Bond. Absolutely, right?
No, 100%.
So today we're going to be talking about License to Kill, my friend. Now, we just went and saw Goldfinger in the theaters together. Now, can we talk about that experience?
Fantastic.
Amazing, right?
You can't go back. It's not the same, right? If you didn't get to experience it, when it came out, and now, especially with the new sound, the way it looks on the big screen, it's a whole nother experience. Mm-hmm. I can't stress that if people haven't seen it, they got to go see it.
It's 1960s movie. You see it in theaters. It holds up. It was amazing. Every part of that was amazing. Now, fast forward. We watched License to Kill together. Can we talk about that experience together?
Maybe not so amazing.
I mean...
Maybe not as much luster, right?
Yeah, you look at the difference between the experience you have watching a well played out story with amazing set pieces,
right,
like grandeurs, all this other things. And then we watch Lethal Weapon meets Miami Vice meets poor Disney Epcot. It was...
Yeah, that might be the best comparison. Actually, put all that into one mash of terrible. Yeah.
So, how into Bond are you? What is your first Bond experience? And thank God it wasn't License to Kill.
No. So, 97, No Time to Die. Excuse me.
Tomorrow Never Dies.
Yes, Tomorrow Night. Excuse me. So
it'll probably be 2097 before we actually see No Time to Die.
So, I really enjoyed it. I came in and I've been a Bond fan ever since. I mean, not as maybe an illustrious fan as you per se. Just maybe looking at this small landscape here.
This is one that everybody has. This isn't.
Maybe not. I'm not sure. But I've always found it fascinating. Some of the books that I've gotten to read have been excellent. Just the idea of Bond and what
you just read Anthony Horowitz's too.
Yes,
right? I gave you which is Forever and a Day.
Yeah, which is fantastic, by the way. I really have enjoyed that, and it's just the whole mentality of like how the persona, the character, the development into
the chicks.
Of course, I mean, I don't even know why we're. Come on,
clearly.
I mean, the fact that a series has their own category of just Bond girls, that kind of tells you that, like, obviously that's something to look forward to, no matter what movie it is. So, even in this movie, that was not bad.
Not bad. I know. Again, like I said, we just saw Goldfinger, and again, like
classic. Just
we're 30 years old giggling at Pussy Galore Porsche. Like literally every time we go Porsche, we're like giggling like
thankfully
idiots.
That theater was pretty much empty because of COVID.
It was just us giggling.
It was totally worth it though.
Oh, it was so good. So then we come in here and we watch License to Kill, and just from the start, from the onset, with the helicopter and the DEA, and they're like coming down like, oh, Sanchez. It just, the whole movie from start to finish lets you know this doesn't feel like a Bond movie.
No, it doesn't have the same. I mean, and everybody might have their own opinion, but I definitely think that without question that this movie is. It wasn't made for Bond. That Bond. This isn't a character. Or this isn't a villain. Bond would be going after.
Who wants to go to Florida?
No, nobody does. I mean, they have their. Unless you're like stalking Florida, man. Then I get it. Always a great story. Yeah. But no, I don't think that this is really a great chapter for Bond.
Mm-hmm. One of my worst scenes that I saw, like when Felix is sitting there and he's going, "See you in hell, Sanchez." Like, it doesn't even fit at all with the character of Felix. Doesn't fit at all in the movie, the plot. It makes no sense that this good guy is like being fed to sharks and be like, "See you in hell, Sanchez."
Yeah, like there's not much of a. That would be something I think a character might say to someone who has more of an attachment to, or maybe it's had an ongoing thing with. That's just
it's TV movie stuff.
It's just a terrible line in that movie. Felix is a great character for who he is. You could definitely, take the angle of the CIA, drugs, and the fact that, especially if you want to talk about how it's maybe the U.S. government's fault and how they're in that situation because they've been, I don't know, buying drugs from one, selling to another, causing a war. That might make more sense.
Yeah.
This one just, we're just going to feed you to sharks and just call it a day. It's fine.
And also, Bond, chill with the wife.
I feel like that's a really great discussion piece.
Way too many lip kisses.
Yeah.
Even like the correct thing is a one hand shoulder pat, not a full-on lip kiss.
Yeah, I mean, maybe a cheek kiss at the most, because because of the friendship thing. Maybe that's a.
It is Florida,
I even think that's.
It is Florida though, and there are way too many swingers clubs in Florida for me to just dispel the fact that it's okay.
I mean, I don't want to think about Felix in a swingers club, so let's just move right on out of that topic.
You don't want to go down. You don't want to go down that rabbit hole.
I don't know if anyone wants to go down that rabbit hole.
What do you think about Sanchez himself?
So the idea. I mean, if you want to look at it as just a straight drug dealer, fine. I wouldn't call him like the greatest of villains, even for just a regular action film, let alone a Bond film. Gotta love the pet iguana, I guess. I mean, that's definitely a great,
It's a baller move, just to walk in with an iguana on your shoulder.
I mean, who else do you know has that? I mean, to be fair, I can't think of one off the top of my head. If anyone can, I'd love to hear about it. I'd love to watch it, actually.
Yeah, some of the action stuff is cool. When he does the planes and he goes in the plane, he goes in, he throws the money out. Mm-hmm. Some of the action pieces are cool.
Some of it, I mean, the Coast Guard and like all this, I don't know what they're doing, and I don't know how they're really involved. That doesn't really make a lot of sense. Yeah. I mean, I like, some of the escape and on the highway. That's kind of cool, especially because the keys, and that makes sense at least for the bridge or, that over the ocean. That's cool. I like that. Just because it's at least fits in well.
What about Dalton himself? How do you find him? How do you receive him as a Bond?
So, I know a lot of people may or may not like him. Me, personally, I find him amusing. I don't know if he fits as a great Bond per se. But, I mean, I think he at least gives it a great effort. He puts it... I feel like he at least puts some energy into it. Except it almost feels more of like a gag in this movie. He's not taking this one.
So serious. It's like... It's too much at some point. You're like, oh my God, bro. Like, chill. Mm-hmm. Like, chill time. With his widow's peak and his terrible outfits. And he's just like... Always angry at the same point. He just, for me, he lacks the... He has the dark brooding, okay? And even that is kind of silly, but there's so much more to Bond than just being like, "Rawr!"
Yeah, I mean, I've always enjoyed. I mean, we even talked about when we watched Goldfinger and how it was. I don't even know why I missed that, but I found it amazing. Just the beginning and the end. The death scenes for electricity and the great little one-liners of that he doesn't have. That.
Shocking.
Yeah,
absolutely shocking.
I don't find
Porsche. I'm sorry. I'm definitely gonna say that too many times, but this is the best way.
The fact that you get to say that is just...
You must be joking.
I mean, that's why we're not seeing that often in films, though, because, I mean, a lot of people might not find that appropriate anymore. I don't know.
Well, we do.
We do. And it's an excellent, excellent name. But...
Yep.
Yeah, when it comes to Dalton, I wish for so much more, because I think in some other movies, he is funny. Maybe not as a Bond. I don't know.
Yeah. I think that's the whole sentiment about this whole movie is that in and of itself, it could be like an 80s film that you'd forget and maybe one time see on TNT or something. But to put it in the Bond pantheon, especially, like I said, we just juxtapose going to see Goldfinger in the theaters and then so they have to sit there and watch that TV movie of License to Kill. It's just a huge letdown for me.
No, I agree. I mean, even as we talked about before, the Roadhouse scene.
The Roadhouse.
I love
Roadhouse.
I do love the bar scene. That's so funny. Just shotguns through walls, plywood palace of the bar. Like, that's
Roadhouse.
Great. Yeah. You can't go wrong.
No.
I mean, that's, at least you can say that's a humorous
Why is she sitting there with the shotgun and stuff in her lap?
It doesn't make sense. Like, right? Like, that's not a built scene.
And even the way he finds it's just poor writing to me. It's like, okay, and then all of a sudden it's just too easy. It just doesn't work for me. Yeah. But the way I always do it, I have to always ask this. So here's the real tough question. Okay, you got a chance. Okay, be with any of the Bond girls. You pick any single one of them, but afterwards, you got to get dumped in the shark tank. It was worth it, Sanchez.
Yeah, I mean, do I get to say that? I mean, is it yes. Sanchez standing over me?
Sanchez, yes, you actually get to brag that you actually got one of the Bond girls.
Yeah.
But who's the one worth being dipped in the shit? Who are you dipping it in for the Shark Tank for?
So I might take a page from one of your other prior visitors, I'm gonna have to step in a quantum of solace, and yeah, I'm gonna have to, dude. Strawberry, come on.
Strawberry Fields.
Why not?
Oh, you know what? I didn't see the redhead. I didn't see the redhead angle. I get it. Those gingers. You gingers.
Stick together, bud.
Ginger swine.
There's only so many of us. We got to stick together.
No, you know what? It's not a Gamma she. I can see it. I can see it.
I'm just saying.
Way to be unique with it. Yeah. Strawberry Fields.
I'd have to go with that. And not only that, to be fair, if I get to say that to Sanchez, he has to have the iguana on his shoulder when I'm going down. I don't know why. I need that. I need it.
I ate Strawberry Fields.
Yeah.
that's how your very last words.
I'm okay with it. I mean, and if I end up like Felix, I mean, I'm still going to be in one piece, I guess. Right? So I guess I'm all right. I mean,
sort of, right?
Could be worse, I guess.
It could be worse. Greg, thanks for coming on, buddy.
Oh, thank you.
As always. Greg, thanks for getting License to Kill. Some of you like it. Some of us are same boat, TV movie. All right, Greg, thanks for coming on today. It took forever to get you on. God, kept ducking me. But it's good to finally got him on. So just to kind of close it out. I don't know what the answer is. How do you solve a problem where there's such high demand? You know, how do you solve a problem like Maria? How do you solve a problem like the drug problem in the United States? How do you solve that? I don't know. It hasn't been through legality. That's for damn sure. People still want to get high. How do you change that? And you look at other countries that don't have this pervasive drug use problem that the United States have. I don't know. How do you change that? You know, the only reason that the cartels are rich beyond belief is because the United States pays beyond belief to get their product. I don't know. I don't know what the secret is. I don't know what the answer to stopping the drug problem is. I don't know. Maybe Nancy had it right. Either just say no, and if you don't say no, that's all we're gonna do. That's the policy. Make it legal. Make it Oregon. At this point, just make it Oregon. Make everything legal, and if you don't want to, just say no. But I can tell you what I would not say no to: seeing Lupe's boobs or Pam Bouvier's. It's been quite a history. I haven't done that in a while. I feel like I needed to bring it back. You know. This has been Quantum of History. This has been Donnie Walden. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you're not subscribing, subscribe. All right, guys. Thank you so much. Take care. And as always, stay positive out there.
Then hit that subscribe button. Comment down below. And leave a like and hit that subscribe button. Why are you not hitting that subscribe button?